Good morning, everybody. We're fortunate today to have Panos from NetBeez. Let me tell you, this is a good little tool, great company to work with, good guys. And today, our host, as always, is Master Denny Mew. So, Denny,
Good morning,
let us
Tim.
learn.
Good morning, Panos. And good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another episode of LMTV Live. At least one of us are live. Our guest is definitely live. The rest, Tim and I, not so sure. But anyway, we are very happy to have another one of our favorite company back with us again, NetBeez. NetBeez is known for a few things. NetBeez is known for their little net monitoring box that is extremely low cost, very easy to use, and highly scalable. So with that, I like to turn it over to Panos and first have Panos Panos. Some of our audience might not know your company. Can you kind of quickly explain what NetBeez is, your history, and your role and what you do now for them?
Of course. Thank you both for having me here today. Nice seeing you again. Yeah, so NetBeez, I'm a co-founder of the company. We started the company 4 years ago, actually. We celebrated our 4th year a few months ago. And the whole idea behind NetBeez was to build a tool that can capture user experience on your network. We know that there are dozens of tools, or I don't know how many tools out there for monitoring in the networking space, but we saw there was a gap in the way they approach what the users really see, especially in the modern enterprise network, where you have many remote sites that go over a split tunnel to the data center and to the internet. You have new technologies, and there were new challenges in the way users and network operators would monitor and be on top of things when they need to support their users. And the idea behind NetBeez is that we capture the user experience by deploying sensors on your network, and we implement what we call distributed network monitoring. So we monitor your network from the edges, the remote office, the wireless network where the users are, instead of the data center that has been done traditionally for decades now. I would say that's like in a nutshell what we do at NetBeez and what our product does mainly.
Okay, good. And specifically, you use something that 4 years ago wasn't well known, but by now everyone kind of talks about it, which is the Raspberry Pi engine.
Yes, correct. So the Raspberry Pi is very well-known platform. Actually, the Raspberry Pi, I would say the history of Raspberry Pi started with the history of NetBeez. I think the Raspberry Pi platform is 4 or 5 years old, so we're very both of startup companies. And what the Raspberry Pi did is that introduced a very low-cost, small-size Linux box, pretty much, that among others we use in our product. So we use Raspberry Pi platform as a low-cost Linux server to deploy our software on it and use it as a sensor at its remote site. Because before that, right, if you wanted, let's say, to deploy a server at the remote site, you will need to use maybe like a pizza box server, difficult to install, high power consumption, and all that creates headaches for the installation process, right? So the Raspberry Pi is a very reliable and very scalable hardware platform that has helped us a lot, and many people use it actually for many other things other than networking.
I really like it because it's small, easy to plug in. Customers don't have to be geniuses. No programming, no management. You just plug it in. It connects with your system and goes from there.
Yeah. I mean, my last company, I always make joke that there's no better way to make money except there's no better way to make money than to sell incredibly user-friendly software on top of commodity hardware.
Yeah. I mean, we've stayed away from building and designing our own hardware as much as possible. And the thing is that, you know, right now the Raspberry Pi actually opened a whole new market in the space, where now you have many other platforms like the Banana Pi, Orange Pi, Odriod. Maybe some people have heard of these platforms as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Panos, you mentioned that you have prepared a presentation.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So I have a very short presentation just to you know, like, put things in perspective and show you what we call and what we try to do at NetBeez, like in terms of distributed network monitoring. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me see here. Okay. Share. Okay.
While you're doing that, Panos, one thing a lot of network analysts forget is the basics. And with the NetBeez product out there, you don't have to be worrying about baseline. The NetBeez does that for you, and it alerts you when you start having some aberrant behavior before even users know, and they're your second line of defense.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, Tim. That's true. And the whole idea behind NetBeez is, you know, we started 3 years ago, so it was 2013, right? And we're thinking, hey, it's 2013. We have all these tools, mature tools, and we still rely often on users to detect problems for us, right? They are the detectors of the problems. Why aren't we automating this, right? To make it sure that we have a reliable, automated, and scalable way to you know, like, capture problems and make sure that we can resolve them as soon as possible. So can you see my screen? Everything looks good? Okay, I can get started. So
yeah,
so
why don't you put that on full screen?
I did. Can you see it on? You cannot see it on full screen?
No. Oh, okay. Because I think
it's not full screen for you.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's a problem. They probably put it on a different window.
Let me see. So let me try.
There you go. Something happens.
No, I exited them. Let me see if I can try again here.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I've used it. Panos was very nice to give me one early on, and I still try to use it once in a while. I keep forgetting on some cases, but the other day I was trying to build I had an NTO from Nui, Ixia, whoever, and I had a deposit WAN emulator, and I was actually able to see the Raspberry Pi picking up the NetBeez Raspberry Pi picking up the variance that I was getting from the WAN that I was changing the dimensions of the WAN. So wonderful product. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You're on full screen now.
Okay, great. So, right. So yeah, the whole idea here is, how do we do distributed network monitoring? So monitoring from the edges instead of the core, your data center of your network, right? And why do we need that? I mean, the idea is that we need to solve this problem here, where you have, of course, these days, a distributed enterprise with many remote offices, right? So team is in Atlanta, we are in San Jose. You may have dozens or hundreds of locations that you need to support with no local IT. Of course, your operating people are in the data center, and now your users may access applications, maybe accessing applications that sit on the internet in your data center, browse the internet on a wireless or wired network, and of course, you might have your SNMP panel showing everything green, your NetFlow showing everything green, and you still receive complaints about users, about issues, slowness issues, accessibility issues, right? Why does it still happen, and why don't we capture this user experience exactly from where it happens? That's the edge of the network, right? So we have no visibility on what the user sees. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the idea and the way to capture this user experience is to deploy sensors at exactly where the users are. So a sensor is a hardware component in our case that connects exactly where the user connects on the access layer. And from there, 24/7, continuously, every few seconds or every few minutes, it tries to access service applications, measure performance end to end, from each office towards the cloud, where Salesforce, Office, Amazon sits, towards our data center, and then provide this data to our operating people that can know now within a few seconds when a problem comes up, and then more importantly, having data to troubleshoot, right? So think about it, if you wanted to see what happens in what's going on in LA, right? You would have to RDP to a machine there, or call a user to run a ping test for you, or a trace route, and email you the results back, and so on and so forth. Right? Very painful, very time consuming, and not scalable. So by having a sensor at its remote site, you can capture this information. So the Raspberry Pi, we mentioned specifically the Raspberry Pi because it's a platform that really helped us a lot in our company, but has given a platform that allows to build this type of solutions, type of sensors in a scalable way. It's a very low cost platform. I mean, you can buy it online for under $50, including like the power supply and the case. It's a Debian box, Linux box after all, and it's kind, I would say, just an endpoint, like a thermostat in your network, right? It's like there's a thermostat that just sends information about the experience to your NOC people about what's going on. So, and the idea is that you deploy these sensors, wired and wireless, at each branch office. So in this kind of high-level diagram here, I'm showing you 3 branch offices that at the edge we have a wireless sensor. So again, the wireless is very important in the modern enterprise, with all the like mobile devices, with even your production equipment being on wireless now, right? We really need to capture again how your wireless is doing, right? So in this specific here deployment I'm showing you, we have a wireless sensor at each branch office connected to an access point like another user, and 24/7 running simulation tests to make sure your users there can access Salesforce, data centers, applications. And when now this wireless sensor, let's say, detects performance degradation, low signal strength, that means that the users also in that specific location have an issue. So you can very quickly see if you get an alert, right, from NetBeez, let's say, about a specific sensor detecting low performance, let's say increased latency, or very high time in loading an application, you know that the users at the same location have similar problems. And then, of course, depending on how your setup is and how granular you want to be, you can put sensors in intermediate hops and branches to make sure you capture very fine-grained information on your network. And this is my last slide. I promised I didn't want to, kill you by PowerPoint. So on this slide, I'm giving an example of some of the types of tests and data that you can use to simulate and capture the user experience, or get visibility from the user experience. So think now about each one of these sensors running latency tests with a simple ping test, right? To measure how long it takes to go from a branch office in Atlanta to your data center in Chicago, for example. Making sure your DNS servers, your enterprise DNS servers and public DNS servers work, right? And making sure that HTTP response time of your servers is good and it doesn't create any frustration to your users. Also, you can measure performance with things like speed test and iPerf on your WAN network. So push bandwidth and making sure that your provider delivers the performance they promised. And also do things like VoIP MOS monitoring, right? So with the VoIP monitoring, what you can do is that you can run simulated calls from one endpoint. Again, let's take the Atlanta example, towards another endpoint in Chicago. And with that simulated call, you can measure jitter, packet loss, and latency, and derive the mean opinion score that tells you how the voice quality is, right? Because you don't want to wait until a user places a call to understand or learn that the VoIP is poor and the users cannot talk to each other, right? By using this continuous simulation of voice calls, you can capture issues even before the users experience them. And the last point for wireless these days, again, it's very important to make sure that wireless is reliable. You can measure things like signal strength, link quality, and keep historical about it, right? So when an issue came up, if there was a interference, if there was any issue that might have caused the user experience. So this is what I have in terms of presentation. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to give a comparison, a perspective of how this distributed idea of monitoring can help you capture, give you more visibility, right, and be proactive about issues that may come up on your network, right? So quicker detection of user-facing issues, so that helps, of course, to troubleshoot faster, and then, of course, have data to troubleshoot, right? And with that, I'm gonna exit this. Can you see me okay now? Okay.
No, we can see the thing, not you, but we'll get there.
Okay, let me see. Oh, now it's doing this thing where we're lost in the matrix.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah, one of the things I like about the Wi-Fi monitors, a lot of times in companies, and we see it all the time, and I get called in a lot on, is someone will say, hey, I bought a $20 router at Walmart, and I'm gonna just plug it in so I can have my own Wi-Fi at work. And of course, hackers and criminals use that also to get into companies. And with your Wi-Fi, you'll see an aberrant SSID pop up. And plus, you can see, when someone calls you up and says, my Wi-Fi is not working, you can pretty easily determine if it's their problem. The Wi-Fi might be down. It might be crowded. People forget that a Wi-Fi router is bandwidth limited too. And then on top of that, you got the LAN limitations. But the neat thing about it is you can look at the LAN, you can look at the Wi-Fi, and like you said, you can run a variety of real-time tests or traditional, pings and things like that. That remote capability is really imperative, because people can't jump in a car and drive to, they're in Philadelphia and they got an office in Michigan. They're not going to get in a car and drive there. But if they had NetBeez there, they could find out what's going on and at least start dissecting where the problem lies very quickly.
Yeah, a very common, since you brought up the wireless team, a very common use case is where at each side you have a pair of agents, and one wired and one wireless. So now, let's say, a user complains on the wireless that the experience is a slowness problem, right? Then you can very easily see if your also agents, your sensors are on both networks. You can very easily see if the problem is also detected from both wired and wireless sensors. Does the wired or does the wireless, right? So actually, if it's the wired, then the wireless will also see it, right? Because the wired monitor is the backend, right? So from there, you can very easily differentiate and narrow down your, I would say, triage process, right, when you're troubleshooting.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're trying to find where the bleed is at before you start taking action, because a lot of times you get false positives, So
right,
I like the way it dichotomizes, though, too, and like you said, you can put them everywhere, and you can pretty easily, without having to do anything, just look at your panel, and if everything's green, you can go to lunch, and hopefully when you come back, they're all still green. Now, your system can also page people, can it? I mean, if something starts going wrong.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, you can, in terms of, when a performance issue is detected, let's say, latency increased by 3 times compared to historical, right? So the idea is that you deploy the sensor, you create a baseline. So you know that, hey, this is my baseline in terms of latency, HTTP response, whatever that is. And then you can get an alert when you deviate from that baseline by a certain amount, which you can, of course, control and adjust. And then, of course, notification is a very important thing. You can receive an email in your inbox. You can integrate with other tools and get notifications, even on other like collectors, let's say, of network monitoring performance data that you might have in your arsenal. Yeah, notification, of course, is very important to know about an issue. If you don't know about it, you cannot solve it. And what we're trying to do is be able to make this notification detection bypass, I would say, bypass the user phone call, eliminate that, and bypass even the help desk, in the sense that the help desk now these days, right, you have tiered type of help desk of support in your enterprise, right? First tier maybe is the help desk, where they collect information from multiple sources, multiple users call in, and when they find the problem critical enough, they may escalate it to the next tier, and then the next tier, right? So there's like a broken chain of communication there, where let's say the tier 3 of the NOC or the network engineer will receive information from tier 2 or as distilled by the help desk, without having themselves like true visibility on exactly what the user sees and what happened, right? So we are trying to close that communication gap and make things easier to detect. And it's all about providing the right amount of data.
Yeah, because a traditional analyst would go out and do a baseline, and then he would have to go deploy something out there to look at his baseline. But this brings it all back to an automation system, and in very cost effective. Like you were saying earlier, very cost effective. You're not spending tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. A company could get a very good start with less than $10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And again, I mean, you can always start small. You can cover your main, I would say, locations, or maybe offices or remote offices that are big pain points that have many issues, and then scale, right? It's easy to scale to hundreds of sensors. Right now, we have installations and deployments that have hundreds of these sensors in a global scale, right? So yeah, and it's something we put lots of effort in. So the scalability to be able to both from the dashboard. I didn't show you our dashboard today. Sometimes dashboard demos are a little bit confusing, so I won't show you this today. But I've done it in the past. But we put lots of effort to make a dashboard is scalable, can support hundreds of these agents. And then what like the user or the network engineer that uses NetBeez doesn't know often is that how much effort is put on the back end, right? The server, the database, the data crunching, the statistics that need to support all these data points and hundreds of sensors that upload data and need to create alerts and keep everything like reliable and up to date. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the healthcare industry, where you traditionally don't have a lot of network people, you have the minimum, but a lot of medical people. This would be great, so they can keep touch with their devices, because all the devices today in the medical care world, or at least most of them, interface to networks to let for inventory, for updates, for patient measurements and things like that. And you don't want that to go down right in the middle of your treatment.
Of course.
And if it does, you want to know about it very quickly. And I just think this is a great product. People should at least buy a few and play with them.
Yeah, I mean, what you can do, users that are interested in this, they can do a couple of things. Of course, they can find lots of information on our website about what NetBeez does in more detail. Today, I just scratched the surface with the presentation of what we do. However, if you have a Raspberry Pi, and I know that these days everybody has one sitting in their drawer. In many cases, they bought one just to do something interesting with it, and and they had never used it. So you can very easily actually test NetBeez by yourself, right? So you don't have to talk to us. You can go to our website, sign up for a free account, get your own dashboard, plug in your Raspberry Pi to the network, and then use it to monitor your home network, your parents' network. When they call you to fix the internet, you can deploy, you put a Raspberry Pi there to see what's going on, and even try it in your enterprise, right? Enterprise network. You can see if, can provide some information that's useful for you. And of course, we'll be happy to talk to anybody that needs more information or a more involved, I would say, test of NetBeez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's too small for a doorstop anyway, so might as well use it for something better.
Yeah, but your two big partners are Cisco and Cumulus. Cumulus is a big cloud company, so this also has a great applicability if you're diddling in the cloud world, if you're sending data out in the cloud world. And Cisco, notice here you can also install NetBeez on a Cisco ISR. That's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can do that with Cisco. Actually, this year we went also to Cisco Live. It was our first Cisco Live, great event. And yeah, I mean, you can we have a specific agent that can go on an ISR router. Also, for ASR routers or any VM infrastructure, you can install a virtual agent. I talked a lot about the hardware agents and how they can be deployed on the wireless network at the remote office. But on your data center side, for example, right, everybody now has, of course, VM infrastructure or any type of virtualization. You can install a virtual agent. So you put a VM, you spin it up, and now you have an agent sitting in your data center. You can capture that corner of your network as well. So again, it's a way to actually cloud agents also, right? If you have any of them, if you are using any of the public cloud providers, Amazon, Google, Azure, you can also install like one of our agents on their cloud or in your own cloud, like the infrastructure. And again, do this end-to-end vendor agnostic performance measurement, right? So you make sure that again, your users at each site can access your data center by running an hyperv test, latency test with the performance they're supposed to.
Very nice.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, since last time we talked, I think it was a year ago, right? Yeah, we have made lots of improvements in our tool, much better reporting, for to be able to slice the data, much better support for performance testing, and lots of work on the back end for scalability and better data management.
Okay. Hey, Panos, I'm going to put up your website.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to close the show. For the viewers out there who are interested in learning more about your product and your technology, they can obviously go to your website, netbeez.net. And just quickly, a minute, where should they go? What can they do when they get there?
Right. So one thing is that they can look at in more detail what the product does under the product option there, product menu, and then the other thing is that if they want to try NetBeez themselves, as I mentioned earlier, with a free tier, with a free account under plans, you can find the free account option that will give you, if you have your own Raspberry Pi, or even if you want to try a virtual agent under VBox or your data center, you can still do that with a free account. And just to bring up that at the end of the month, I think it's on if you scroll down, we have, I think, the date exactly. It's on the 29th of August. We have a webinar that Stefano will give in more detail what I covered today, but delve a lot on the details about the distributed network monitoring idea. Actually, the webinar sign up is on the lower right corner, Danny, where that pop-up is. If you close the one pop-up, you can see the webinar sign up.
Okay. Yeah, there's very, very nice website, clean and simple, and lots of useful stuff there. So definitely go check it out. Tim and I have been very excited about this company ever since we heard about it, and we were so excited that they were part of interop, and we did a lot of. So with that, Tim, any I know you said a lot already, but any last word before we sign off?
I think if they go to the website and actually play with the system, and they can always call Panos or Stefano, and if you're in a corporate network, you really should try this. This will really make your ability to sleep at night a little bit nicer, and your day to be successful more, because you don't have to run around looking for problems, and if something occurs. And this is also a good security product, because one of the first things you see in an environment where there's any kind of attack is traffic change. And this is very good at picking up, something's going on here, because users don't catch it usually. So, but wonderful. I think it's a great product. I've been telling Panos and Stefano that since I first saw it, which has been almost 2 years ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
2.5 years ago. And so try it. And if there's some articles about it on Love My Tool, I think Panos told me that he was going to try to get some more articles up about the dynamics of monitoring remotely. That'd be a great paper, and look forward to it real soon. And Panos, you've done a great job, and take good care of Constantine.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Danny.
Who's Constantine?
It's my 15-month son. That
Yeah, I was I kind of figured that. So basically now it's a race between your company growing up and your family growing up, and let's see which one is more under control.
I have 2 babies now, and I shouldn't forget my wife, 3 babies. So.
Well, okay, good.
Man.
Good. Panos, thanks again for coming to the show, and really great presentation, and very excited to hear about you guys doing so well. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you. Thanks again for coming, and thanks, Tim. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Be good. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.